Welcome to the Tough Decisions Network for Entrepreneurs. I'm Dan Hanford, and my wife, Danae, and I interview successful people sharing stories behind tough decisions that they've had to make along their journey as an entrepreneur. On the podcast with us today is Corbett. He's an award-winning serial entrepreneur, TEDx speaker, entrepreneur in residence, and host of the popular Startup Canada podcast and the video series 13 Fears. Welcome to the podcast with us today, Rivers.
Hey, Dan, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Hi, Rivers. We would like for you to get us started on our podcast and just kind of fill in a little bit of the gaps and tell us exactly what you're doing right now as an entrepreneur.
Right on, Danae, and hi to you too. Look, I really have two main focuses for what I'm doing as an entrepreneur. The one is, as we all do at some level, I continue to build businesses. I'm working with two exciting new business ventures, one in the entrepreneur education field, the other one in the natural deodorant, vegan-based deodorant field with two companies that are getting ready to scale. So that's exciting for me. And the other part is my role of the entrepreneur in residence with my province of New Brunswick. My focus is on significantly moving the spirit and actions of entrepreneurship throughout the region amongst all the entrepreneurs in the province. So it's fun-filled, and then I volunteer a lot of time, and of course, the podcast show too.
So I want you, Rivers, to start us off with a tough decision that you've had to make that didn't have that good of an outcome, and maybe you talked about some of the lessons that you learned through that tough decision.
Yeah, it's a great question. And, being an entrepreneur, of course, you get lots of those tough decisions that come your way. And so when I was thinking about how I can best answer this question, it really came down to what's the one that's haunted me the most? And, and one of those ones was a time when I was building a national restaurant chain with my friend Chef Ray. We had great momentum behind it. We had just finished building one of the restaurants, and our original investor backed out of his investment in our operation. We had to go to the contractor at the time, tell him it was a six-figure bill that we owed him, so we couldn't pay him. That investor had said the money was coming, and so the decision that we ended up making versus taking our time in making that decision is we took the first person that came along with money to help us out and get out of that bind. And what ultimately happened from that is that because we took the money over necessarily really understanding who the people were that we were going to get into business with, who were the second investor group, that ultimately it ended up being just a horrific relationship. The entire chain ultimately folded because of that relationship. And it was a real painful experience when I, ultimately had to call the bank, had to call the media. We had a very public presence in the community, family, friends, all those things to tell them that things were falling down. So that ultimately was a hard decision to make. I wish I didn't make it that way. I wish we had taken our time and ultimately choosing that additional second investor group with that operation.
So what was the difference between that original investor and the one that you had put in its place that you didn't really, vet properly, or I guess have enough time to vet them because you were kind of stuck? What was the difference between the two of them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think the answer is, so the question more along the lines is, what was the similarity between the two of them that ultimately I think, who was at the scene of the crime both times? And we had a intermediary that I'd met through LinkedIn connections, and he was the one that got the original investor. And then when that started to fall apart, he says, "Don't worry, I've got a second group here that we're going to be able to tap into." So it really was a trust factor there on both parts for having him there. And so what was the difference? I guess the difference was nothing, except we were in it with this one guy. Now, that being said, the second time around, we didn't have to take his suggestion, but we were just in desperation. I live in a town of a city of 70,000 people, and everybody. And so through these public pressures, ultimately we were left taking the same lead or similarly that the guy originally had sent us down. So yeah, I guess I stuck with the devil I knew, and unfortunately ended up being the devil. So,
how large did you grow that franchise?
We were across the country. We were in 6 out of 10 provinces. We had 12 operations, and it was a going concern. And so, it was a neat little deal. It was a gourmet burger operation. And we had built a really significant brand that had great traction behind it, great excitement, enthusiasm, amazing product. My business partner, Chef Ray, is just one of the best chefs in the country. And we ended up dealing with all kinds of factors that caused us to run out of money and not be able to keep up with the demands of all of the operations. And so it was left to 1 or 2 to support the rest of the country, and it just wasn't able to do that.
So if you were to go back and do it differently, what would you do differently that would possibly keep it from going under?
Yeah, I would ultimately, our goal was always to be big. And, there's an age-old saying, cash is king. Well, I always like to say access to cash is king. And I think what I would have done is, one, had a 3X or a 5X availability of cash than what you would traditionally have needed to grow a chain. The other thing is that most definitely I would have done much more research and understanding as to the marketplace that I went into. Fundamental mistake that we made there is assuming what worked because we were so passionate about the brand and the delivery of the brand and the response to the brand that we figured it would work in similar marketplaces across the country. Well, it didn't, because it didn't have that connectivity with the community as I did in my own community and Chef did in our community. And so, those were two big mistakes that if I went back, I'd definitely go back for wait until I had more cash, and also do much more research into the market itself before going into it.
So the next cool thing I want you to go through is a tough decision that you had to face, and it had a really good and positive outcome, and some of the lessons you learned through that one.
Yeah, I think the best one that I can refer to, and it was a personal tough decision. And then early part of my career, I hired my brother to work for me. And about 8 to 10 months into the relationship, I ultimately had to fire him. I had to get rid of him. And what I learned from that experience was that he actually knew that it was coming. And he and I, continue to have a great relationship today, and we laugh about that particular scenario. And so out of that came, yes, a positive relationship, but also the other part of learning about what your head needs to go through when it comes to letting people go. And, it's ultimately best for both of you that happened. This isn't a bad news scenario. It's a good news scenario for both of you, because neither one of you are happy in that relationship. So as the time went on and I started to have to let other people go who just weren't right for the team, for goodness sakes, I'm a big fan of NFL football, and my buddy Bill Belichick's like, people go all the time. It's what's best for the team. And so I really did a fundamental shift from understanding that part of my business. I had to think with my head, not my heart. And so, yes, it was tough. It was my brother, right? It's my little brother. It was a pretty devastating time then, but ultimately it ended up being a real positive experience long-term for all of my time in business.
So, Rivers, talk a little bit about the strategies that you've developed to face these difficult decisions that as entrepreneurs we face on a daily basis. What techniques or strategies do you use in making these decisions?
The answer might be one that's a traditional one, and it goes back to a journey that I have had 2 times in business, and that is that I have fallen into depression. One time I was in bed for 3 months, the other time I was in bed for a month. And so ultimately what that taught me during those very tough and difficult and ugly times, and yes, tough decisions had to be made, is that unless I have a focus on my health, nothing else will work. Nothing else you can't bring clarity, you can't bring strength, you can't bring longevity. I remember one time I heard Richard Branson, the famed Virgin owner, he said, they asked him a question, what's the best thing you can do for the success of your business? Everybody gets into branding, cash flow analysis, teamwork, and so on. He says, no, you got to look after your health. And so when you have clarity based on the strength of your health, then you're able to do that. So things that I do personal development. I do journaling. I do 150 push-ups a day. I hate doing them, but, it's that formula for keeping my mind strong and my body strong that ultimately allows me clarity and strength when it comes to making those tough decisions. I eat the most amazing breakfast, all to get me through the day. Sleep, you got to get appropriate amount of sleep. These people that brag about the fact that they can go, 400 hours a day without sleep, and that's got to catch up to you, and it's got to have an impact on your business, particularly when you're making tough decisions. Those are really the tactics that I address. The other one is that I'm a big believer that business is a team sport, and so you get the right people, as the great Jim Collins says, the right people on the bus, and then get them on the right seat on the bus so they can help you make those decisions. Don't hide from making those tough decisions by yourself, because it's actually at those times that your team really wants to come together and help get through those difficult and dark times. So those are two main ones, Danae, that I would say really I have consistently learned is important during my career as an entrepreneur.
All right, we're going to take a quick break to hear from one of our show sponsors. When we come back, we'll talk to Rivers about some of his favorites in relation to his life as an entrepreneur.
Have you ever thought about investing in real estate, but find yourself so busy that you don't have time for it? Do you have FOMO, which is the fear of missing out? At HanfordCapital.com, we help investors with passive real estate investments that project better returns than traditional investment vehicles such as the stock market. If you'd like to find out more about our passive real estate investments, visit HanfordCapital.com. That's HANDFORD capital.com. We will jump on a call with you to discuss your investment goals and to see if our investments are a good fit for you. This advertisement is not to be construed as an offer or recommendation to buy or sell a security. Visit HanfordCapital.com. All right, we are back, and we are talking with Rivers Corbett, and we want to go through what is called the trifecta, which is a series of quick questions and answers for you. And first thing I want you to start us off with, Rivers, is what is your most favorite technology that you have found that has helped you in business and helps make your life easier?
There's no doubt about it, hands down, the smartphone. I couldn't live without my smartphone, cell phone, whatever you want to call it, but it's that one small little piece of technology, hands down, that I couldn't live without.
And what is a favorite quote that you have heard that's helped you as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a sexist quote. I never wrote it, gang, so but I can tell you it sure resonates with me. It says, the man at the top of the mountain didn't fall there.
Huh. Man at the top of the mountain didn't fall there. I like that.
Thank you.
What about a favorite book that you've read that's helped you either in the way you make decisions or as an entrepreneur in general?
Yeah, I love that you asked that question. And I've read many books, and I'm a big fan of reading books, but the one that I really, really enjoyed that has resonated with me for a long time was the guy that started the Survivor series, Mark, I can't remember his last name, but he wrote a book called Jump In. And it talks about how he came to the United States with the proverbial nothing on his back, and his journey on how he built that epic series called Survivor, and then he went on and built many other things. And so a lot of hidden jewels in that book. And the other thing is not a lot of people have read it, so I highly recommend it. The other ones are obviously the Richard Branson books. I really love them too.
All right. So I want you to talk to us a little bit about what is the next thing for you that's on your vision or your dream board.
Yeah. So it's a philosophy of life. Well, work, I guess, is part of life. And I always I joke at people when they say, what's your work-life balance? Well, isn't work part of life? And so I really say, my philosophy is, as I'm building the next chapter of my life, that I want to work anywhere, anytime. And if the things that I'm involved with allow me to do that, then that's where my focus is. And that's really what the natural deodorant business is allowing me to build, and to grow, as well as the entrepreneur training platform that we're working with. And so over the next 10 years, to continue to do that, and then to be at the position that I can work in my business if I want to, not because I have to.
And how can the listeners reach out to you if they want to find out more information about you or start to follow you some more after listening to this episode?
Well, of course, they can continue to listen to this great podcast that you two are putting together and listen to the interview. And thanks for allowing me the opportunity to chat. But it's real simple. Just www.meetrivers.com.
So go to meetrivers.com, and we'll also put that link in our show notes at toughdecisions.net. Thank you so much, Rivers, for taking some time out of your schedule to be with us today on the podcast. And we look forward to having you on a future episode as you continue to grow as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, you two are rock stars. Keep on happening with the great work you're doing. Thank you. It's been an honor.
Thank you for listening to the Tough Decisions Network. Be sure to visit toughdecisions.net to gain access to show notes for this episode and to join our free weekly entrepreneur email, where we will send you news about the latest technology for your business, inspiring quotes, and the latest books for entrepreneurs. That's toughdecisions.net.